All right, so last week's events were several persons from communities in Spanish Town took to the streets to protest over the killing of the reputed gang leader there, significant, posed several questions. Are criminals seen as heroes for their communities, and if so, why? Joining us this morning, criminologists R.A. Blake and Dr. Jason Mackay, who is also with me in studio. On Zoom, we've got life coach and assistant lecturer at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, Mona Unit, Carla Moore. Good morning to you all. Thank
morning,
you for
everyone.
being here this morning.
Morning.
I'm going to start with you, Mr. Security Man, if that's okay with the ladies.
Yes.
You would have seen many of these rising ups, incidents. I don't even know what to call them at this point. Your thoughts on what you saw last week?
I mean, it's the rise and fall of another one, you know. I saw it happen over the last couple of decades, happen many times. I remember the Bunman one, which was far worse than this one. The riots lasted for days, you know. So it's kind of a reoccurring domino. You know, somebody comes up, is embraced somewhat by the community, but it's also a little bit more than that. It's not really an embracing, it's almost like an acceptance that someone is in charge of you because they are the armed force in the community. I think we get.
Is that a cultural thing?
I think it's just fear. You know, it's not. You grow up in a garrison. You get used to the fact that the system, which is the gang, is in charge of the community. You don't necessarily like it because there is far more abuse than there is Robin Hood type of activity going on. But you behave like that because you're constantly afraid and you're almost brainwashed into this belief. Mm-hmm. But it's more fear. It is not the adoration because the abuse does affect the community in many ways. You find the young ladies in the community are brought into sexual activity far earlier than they want to be. The young men are used as gun bags and hiding guns in their yard and so on, which gives them the target of the police. So this type of adoration that we're being sold, it's not really true. It's not genuine. It's
just. Do you agree or you disagree with that?
I agree in some instances. Due to cognitive dissonance, you agree that what you're seeing, your belief and your values are contradictory. So you believe what you know is wrong, but because of the system that you are used to, you have to accept it.
Socialization?
For example, and cultural factors. So for example, an honest criminal, for example, they exist. Yeah, they believe in their head they exist.
There were folks in the community saying he's a kind man, a giving man.
Giving, and this is the instance that they perpetrate the fear and the social factor. So because I give you and I can come to John and get the money for the school fee, that allows them to displace what they really are supposed to be doing. Yep. So the intimidation becomes acceptable because it's now a norm. So that's where the cultural factors come in place.
It
becomes a benefit. And for example, you know, as you mentioned, the young ladies, at 15, they don them a call for your daughter to come up. Now, remember, they're the one who sent your daughter to school. So you're obligated now to perpetrate that same cycle of sexual abuse and human trafficking.
Yep. And Carla, not just the Don, you know, but his entry.
Yep. Carla, whereas I understand and maybe even accept all what I've heard thus far, that's why they're alive. But them gone now, and people are still saying, why them shouldn't kill him because he's the greatest man in the whole place and is him. Why? I mean, I can understand the fear if he's there, but if not there anymore, why are you still bigging him up, for want of a better phrase?
Stockholm Syndrome.
It's a great question. It could be Stockholm Syndrome, yes, part of it. But the other thing you have to remember is because the Don is gone, it doesn't mean that the other enforcers are gone.
Yep.
After the Don is removed from the community, then there's going to be the battle for who is going to take over. And a lot of people know that the moments after a Don is killed are some of the most violent moments inside of a community because now there's a competition for who is going to be the new Don. So you want to be mindful of what you're doing in that moment so that the new Don don't have any issue with you. So the fact that they are gone don't mean that the potential of violence they are gone with him.
Is there usually like succession? I mean, or is there really like an internal competition, like, you know, the next great Don of the community?
A little bit of both.
Isn't there usually like somebody who is like there in waiting?
Like second, there's usually a second,
right?
But sometimes they fight out, they kill out the second themselves to get the Upper factor.
And there's more of that battle for the top with the clans.
Within themselves.
Right. The one other, I think, Bonman's ascension was a little bit. Well, after he went, the ascension that followed after Bonman was a little bit less than it was than the clash you've seen with the clan leaders killing off each other for years. I mean, there was still conflict, but not as much conflict as you saw between Blackman and Tesha Miller for years. So the expectation is you would have some issues, but not as much blatant violence as you have had in the clans comparison.
Yeah. You mentioned paying school fee. What else they do for the people?
Charity. So in their instances, by providing charity towards, the new basic school need a new chair, or the hospital need a new ward, for example. By them providing these services, they have a hold on the community. The community feel obligated now to not only protect them, but also to legitimize their means. Because if the community, if the social structure and infrastructure of the government did fix all of this, then the Don wouldn't have somewhere for it to seep through and do it look 1 2 1 2. So we have to blame the social infrastructure that is within the lack thereof.
Gotcha.
Mixed with the corruption that allows it to perpetrate same way.
But is that to say that if those things were addressed, the culture would be eliminated? God, this is deep-seated and
No.
Because they're still very well armed, and they still basically have the first victim of these gangs are their own community. That's really where their foot is on the throat.
And if we're looking at the why of it, I mean, Mona said it, Carla echoed and said it could be. Carla, build out Stockholm Syndrome for us a little bit for the folks who don't know what that means.
So Stockholm Syndrome is basically where somebody is kind of being held captive by somebody else or being abused by somebody else, but they develop a deep relationship with them in a way that they have an affinity for them, and they kind of come to depend on them. Like one of the simple ways that people beat is like, oh, somebody kidnap you and you fall in love with the somebody that kidnap you, but it's not always through that lens of falling in love.
Right.
So because people can adapt to a number of different situations, including situations where they're being abused. And I think one of the things we have to look at is that it's not like a single dimension relationship. And that's why the same man that outside as a killer, the community also knows as a caretaker. Mm-hmm. When we talk about what's the role that they play, yes, they might give the chair, they might give the school fee, but also when we are in a situation where violence between communities is something that is commonplace, they are the ones who are protecting you from the other communities who are coming in to, rape, pillage, whatever it is that they're coming in to do. Yep. So the gang as a system is deeply entrenched in the functioning of the community, in the protection of the community. And we also have to think about what community members have to do because it's productive and because it's a matter of survival. Mm-hmm. Human beings are geared towards their own survival, and they will take choices that are going to allow that.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Jason, and it was mentioned quietly earlier, but when you read affiliated to this political party, affiliated to that political party. Does that have anything to do with this?
I guess in some ways, but the political entrenchment with gangs is not as deep as it once was. Not saying it's not very much there, but in the 70s it was a marriage. In the 80s it was a marriage. In the 90s it was started to slip a little bit, and now because of the press, major press, not social media, have been very unacceptable of it. So the days when you would see Mr. Siaga walking in front of a coffin and Mr. Manley associated with, like you saw with the Federmap scenario or the Jim Brown scenario, you'll never see now. But putting that aside, irrespective, if you're going to be the political representative for a place that is a garrison community, then you cannot say you have absolutely no association with the Don. That's just not unrealistic. But on the same token, the persons in that community require political representation. It's something guaranteed to them under the Constitution. So the politician is also one of the victims of this system. It doesn't mean that
one of the victims.
Yeah, because he has no choice. He can't come in and say, I'm going to have nothing to do with a particular, with the Don in the community.
No, but why not? Why can't he say that?
Because that Don can lock down that entire community from voting. He can tell you cannot vote.
Wow.
You understand? Nobody can vote.
They coerce them into...
And then the legitimate citizens who want to exercise their political right cannot. So, trust me, the first victim is the politician, because he can't know nothing about it.
The first victim outside of the community members.
Right. After the community,
After the community
Right.
is the politician, because he inherits it most of the time.
Can I just adjust what he
Yes.
said? Okay, I agree with the victim in the instances, the politicians who really want to make a difference. The ones
Right.
who come into the community
To make change.
but they have to be coerced because they done them and say, yo, you're not going to do what you want to do.
Again,
yeah.
again, I'm saying this is something that is deeply
Right.
entrenched as part of our
The
culture.
villains of our politics
We ourselves
are
are-
not alive now.
Well,
The villains of our politics are 50 years ago and 40 years ago. And the reality is a lot of the younger politicians are being blamed for what they inherited from the heroes we view them as of the past.
so through that lens and through that prism, the question then is, Carla and Mona, if we're going to go to how we can't dismantle the gangs, we're working at that, but how do we dismantle the mindset within the communities? What does it take now for folks to see people, I guess, as some people would say, as they really are? This is not really a good person. This person is maybe doing something for me, but on a broader scale, this person is not somebody to be emulated, adored, because I hear Jason say is more fear than respect, but I feel there's a lot of respect.
There's a lot of respect because there's my father done, my uncle a bad man. There's an association when you go to school or college to say, yo, you know, sir, such and such bloodline I come from. So as much as
Nobody can touch me.
Nobody can touch you. So we as individuals within, whether or not we're in the community, we are to blame. And here's why. Corruption cannot end because we are part of the corruption system. And I say that because if you know the tax office guy, you're still going to link the tax office guy to make him the DMV guy to try pass around. Now you have to link somebody in the garrisons who would then say, you know, somebody at DMV who can assist you. So these low things, you need a loan for your business. You cannot go to these major companies to get these loans. So these gangs and loan sharks become...
Somebody will tell you that I'm a victim of circumstance.
Yep, and it's their needs versus their wants. So unless we as a society and we as the infrastructure address that, the persons living in the community cannot fix it. Because they're going to want loan, they're going to want school fee, they're going to want education, they're going to want all this. And until that's addressed, they're going to keep on seeking it from people who they're not supposed to.
Carla, last word from you. We have to wrap.
When systems fail, it creates spaces for individuals to fill those gaps. And when individuals fill those gaps, then we get into these complicated relationships of dependency, adoration, fear, veneration, all of those things. But I think the final thing that I'll say is that we also need to think about the currency of badness at this point in time, especially for communities that are not valued otherwise. A lot of people will tell you, say, a brand name bad man in a Jamaica that come from certain communities. If the community is not known or respected for something else, human beings have a desire and a need to be known and to be respected and to be thought of as excellent. And if we cannot get it through goodness, then we're going to get it through badness. So if we do not identify the root social malaise, the breakdown that we have in the society, we're going to continue seeing these situations coming up time and time again.
No cure if you can't find the symptom.
Because the three of you, right? The nervous bud.
No, don't be nervous. Let's be
nervous.
hopeful. We're hopeful.
Nervous bud.
We're hopeful.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. God bless everyone. The criminologist,
Thanks for having me.
and Dr. Jason Mackay, who is with us in studio, and life coach and assistant lecturer at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at Mona, Carla Moore. Wow.
Sticky!
My country.
Okay, we're remaining hopeful. Coming up next, we're highlighting the first deaf justice of the peace. Good news!
Great news.
Yay!
Yeah. Whee! Eh?
Gosh.